I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
Spent that whole summer with me in my room watching movies every day.
I love the movies.
I love the movies.
I love the movies.
Welcome
To the house.
Of 1,000 movies.
Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by Hamilton Book. I've been buying from Hamilton Book for many, many years, and they are a great place to find amazing deals on physical media, whether it be Blu-ray, DVD, 4K movies, CDs, or books. They've got it all. Now, I recently placed an order with Hamilton Book, so let me tell you a few things that I grabbed and some examples of what you can find on their site. I got the amazing disaster film Earthquake on Blu-ray. I also got a 3D import of the film Gravity on 3D Blu-ray. Very hard to find, but Hamilton Book had it. I got an Olive Films Blu-ray release of Hitler, The Last 10 Days with Alec Guinness as Hitler. A great movie, and you can't find the Olive Films releases anymore, but Hamilton had them. And I also got Assassination Nation and You Are Not My Mother on Blu-ray. Those were all at an incredible price. We're talking like under $10 each, and they also have new releases, boutique Blu-ray stuff at really good prices. The best part about Hamilton Book is it's flat rate shipping, whether you buy 100 movies or 5 movies, 10 books, 20 books, 2 books, it's the same price for shipping no matter what. So if you want to give them a try, head over to hamiltonbook.com/house and check out their selection today. I can't recommend them enough. I've been a buyer for many, many, many years. I appreciate their support of the podcast, so go support them and their small business. hamiltonbook.com/house. Go check them out and let me know what you think. All right, so I'm about 48 hours removed from seeing Longlegs in the theater, and it was a pretty wild movie. It was so wild that even though I did make some videos for Instagram and YouTube and I talked about it, I really needed to process it and let it sit with me a little bit more, let it really settle in or fester inside of me, and process this with you, because I've got some thoughts about this movie that, I think although the director Oz Perkins has said, no, it's, the story was pretty straightforward, whether he's just saying that because that's in his head, or, I think people are going to pull a lot out of this movie that isn't just what the straightforward story is. And I've got some of my own theories on what that means for Longlegs to me and how I'm feeling about it after sitting with it and really thinking about it for, a couple of days, which I think is really important to do after you watch this, because it is a movie that honestly it scared me more the longer I was removed from it. I was not really scared in the movie theater. It was more unsettling. It created a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension. It was very thrilling, but scary. For a horror fan, no. For a regular audience member who's not into horror, yeah, I could see it. But for me, it was more just unsettling and disturbing. And I actually really enjoy those types of movies because they sit with you and then you keep thinking about them. So today's episode, we're going to talk Longlegs, and I'm going to give you the full breakdown. Now, if you haven't seen Longlegs yet, I would stop listening here at this point, because I am going to get into spoiler territory, obviously, to talk about some of the theories I have and some of the things I'm feeling about this movie. We have to dive into the movie itself and talk about some key plot points. So if you have not seen the movie yet, first of all, go see it. I highly, highly recommend it. It's a great, great movie. Definitely a bit of a slow burn, but if you like Oz Perkins films, you like slow burns, you like psychological thrillers, you like mysteries, twists and turns, like this one will be good for you. Just don't go in expecting it's going to be this terrifying horror, like slasher type movie. It's not that. But go see it. And when you come back to the podcast after you see it, I'd love to hear your thoughts. But if you haven't watched it, I would stop here, because a warning again, spoilers ahead. So to process Longlegs first, let's talk about what the straightforward story is, right? And the straightforward story is we've got this FBI agent, Lee Harker, played by Micah Monroe, and she's investigating a series of family annihilations. So basically there are, I think, 10 or 11 different families in this kind of area in the Pacific Northwest that have been completely wiped out by the father. They all have daughters. Their daughters' birthdays are all around the 14th of the month. And so they're trying to make some connections. The FBI is at a loss. We open the movie with Harker. She's very strange, definitely has some trauma or something going on mentally. And first gig out, she has this kind of intuition. Her partner gets shot in the face going up to this a shocking moment in the movie, killed right away. She goes into like psychic training. They're kind of testing her psychic intuition abilities, and she gets pulled into this Longlegs case. And Longlegs is this serial killer who keeps leaving notes at the scenes of all these family annihilations and crimes, and played by Nicolas Cage. And you got Blair Underwood, who's playing her FBI supervisor, and you've got Alicia Witt, who's playing her mother. And that's really the core cast, is those four right there. So she starts to investigate. I mean, obviously you've seen the movie, so I'm not going to harp on this, but like she starts to investigate. She figures out that her mother may know more than what she's letting on, that she may have had some interaction with this Longlegs character in the past. They start to unravel this supernatural mystery having to do with possessed dolls, and Longlegs being this doll maker who made a deal with the devil and is inserting these dolls into people's homes under the cover of Christianity. And turns out her mother was the accomplice who would dress as a nun, tell them they got a gift, bring the doll into their house. The possessed doll and the devil would then go to work. You know, the father would kill the mother, kill the child, would kill anybody who came in contact with, and then take themselves out. So that's the basic story. And Harker figures all of this out, um, goes to her supervisor, Blair Underwood's house. And unfortunately, the doll's already there. It's the kid's birthday, his daughter's birthday. Um, she tries to stop it all, shoots Blair Underwood, shoots her mother, and then goes to shoot the doll, but doesn't, and then pulls the daughter out of there. And then the movie ends with this incredible Nicolas Cage ending. First of all, let's give our flowers to Nicolas Cage. Um, Unhinged to the max, 150%, gave it his all. And that ending, the hail Satan and a wink and like blows a kiss, unbelievably cool ending to a movie. Like so iconic immediately. So I loved that. And Micah Monroe is incredible. Blair Underwood is incredible. Alicia Witt is a standout. I mean, if the Oscars were going to give any consideration to horror films, which maybe they will to this one, they did Silence of the Lambs is really the only horror-esque film that they've ever really paid attention to, other than Get Out and Jordan Peele's stuff. They could best supporting actress. I mean, that could be in the conversation. Alicia Witt was really, really, really good, and the whole cast is a really tight cast of four, and they're all incredible in this film. So that's the straightforward story. It's supernatural, possessed doll. Longlegs is connected to Harker's mother. He's like living literally in their house underneath her. The man downstairs, he keeps referring to himself as, he is the man downstairs. He's living in their basement, and they're working together to kill these families. And the reason her mother's involved is because she made a deal with him and, you know, ostensibly the devil, to keep her daughter safe. But in return, she had to kill these other families and these other daughters and these little angels, as Longlegs likes to call them. So that's the straightforward, easy answer. Is it's a supernatural possession story mixed with this serial killer detective procedural. But the more I sat with this and the more I thought about it, the more like questions I had, then I feel like we got answers necessarily in the movie, which is what I think is going to spur a bunch of fan theories and deeper dives into this. And I think it's why this movie demands a second watch, a third watch, a fourth watch, to go back and look at all this stuff. And, you know, I'm probably not going to have the opportunity to see it again in theaters, but I can't wait to watch it again to put some of what I believe up against the test of a rewatch and look for some clues that, you know, your first watch, you're unraveling the story and you're watching that. Second watch, I can go into it looking for certain things. Third watch, I can go even deeper. And so I really need to get back to it because I think there's more to the story than what this straightforward supernatural possession story is. And I'm going to get into it. So to start, we've got to talk about Lee Harker. Very, very odd character. Some people online are saying like borderline autistic. Um, Definitely has some trauma or PTSD, has social anxiety, has, you know, something going on. She's not a comfortable person to sit in a room with and hang out with. Not a comfortable person. Very awkward, very strange. And, you know, it's kind of explained, but not really explained in a way that part of this mentality is from her mother. Her mother is very strange. Her mother is a hoarder who keeps everything, including like her little bits box, which is like toenails and things from her daughter, like crazy, creepy things. Hoarder of everything. Her house is covered in boxes, and is very concerned about Lee saying her prayers. You need to say your prayers. Say your prayers. Are you saying your prayers? They'll keep you safe. And it's like, obviously, she grew up in a really strange environment, and her mother was overbearing and overprotective, and probably they kind of insinuate this was repressing Lee's memories of what happened as a child back in 1975 when she met Longlegs. And they show this in the introduction, and you don't know it's Lee right away, but like you're pretty sure it is. And then with flashbacks, we get more of this where they cut back to really cool, like old 70s, like an 8mm style, like aspect ratio, and they show these flashbacks. And okay, so she's had this interaction, but doesn't remember anything about it, but boy, does Longlegs remember her, is obsessed with her, loves her, and we find out why. Like, is it because he lives in her house? Whatever. But she's very odd, and if you connect some of the historical dots of this film and some of what's going on in the world that they created, this is where I start to think, okay, maybe things aren't exactly as they seem. First point is the movie's set in 1993. So 1993 is like peak satanic panic. And if you don't know what satanic panic was, it was this time period in the US, it was in the UK, it was in Europe. I mean, it was almost worldwide, but definitely in the US and the UK, where like law enforcement and politicians and community activists and all these different people, definitely Christianity, like Christian groups, Catholic groups, were convinced that there were rampant satanic cults running around the country, sacrificing children, stealing children, murdering people, doing horrible rituals, just craziness. It became this insane literal panic where every time a child went missing, you know or obviously horrible things were happening to children, and but it wasn't satanic. People are always, they were trying to connect it back to music and movies, and that's how we get video nasties in the UK and movies being banned because they're satanic and they're going to create these satanic killers and they're promoting Satanism, and there's all this panic, and a lot of it has to do with repressed memories, which is a very common theme in Longlegs, is this repressed memory. And what would happen is they would ask kids, basically law enforcement would take kids who were in horrible situations or weren't even in horrible situations, but thought they might have had contact with the satanic people or whatever. And they would basically kind of plant these memories in their heads. They would say, and psychologists were involved in this too. They would say, like, we're pulling out their repressed memories. These horrible things happen and they've repressed it all. And we need to pull it out of them. When in reality, they were more planting ideas in these kids' heads and kind of, like false confessions, basically just pressuring until a kid was like, oh yeah, you know what? Yeah, there was a pentagram on the floor, and yeah, they were doing this crazy ritual. And it's like, they're kids. You can manipulate them. You can change their minds like that. And it's very dangerous. And that's how you ended up with this panic, because they kept having kids saying things were happening that weren't happening. In reality, this satanic panic was total falsehood. It was not real. But it just engrossed the world for years, for decades, a couple, probably 20 years. This was going on. In 1993, it was like towards the end of it, but also towards the peak, because it kind of peaked and then it fell apart. And so if you think about that and repressed memories and everything that's going on in the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, that's where I start to think, okay, maybe some of Lee's memories here are are not actually repressed memories, but are being planted by somebody, by her mother, by a long legs type character, by people growing up. I don't know. But I feel like what she's experiencing isn't exactly what's happening, because you also have to consider, okay, we've had 11 families murdered, between 3 and 4 people per family. So we're talking about 35 to 40 people in one small area of the Pacific Northwest, this like 100 square mile radius of people in area that have been completely annihilated, all in the same way, all with the same killer. And the FBI's response is kind of like, oh, we don't know what to do next. We can't figure it out. I guess we'll bring in the rookie who just saw her partner get blown away. We'll get back to that. And well, let's bring her in and see if she can figure it out. And we've got what, maybe 2 agents assigned to this case. You never see more than 2 agents. You got Blair Underwood, and there's one other agent who you see along with Lee. And it's just like, that's the task force. We've got 2.5, 3 people working on this. And they do insinuate it sometimes that maybe there was a larger group of people, but they all seem very nonchalant about the fact that there were so many murders happening. Like, if there were that many families being wiped out in this one corner of the country, this would be the biggest story in the world. Literally. Like, this would not just be kind of a, man, we got this problem. We got this kind of like serial killer. We can't figure, like, they just, it seems very nonchalant. It seems like people have just accepted the fact that this is going to happen. Even when Lee says, hey, there's a date missing here, the 13th, I think something might happen. They're kind of like, huh, okay, well, I guess we'll see. There's there's no real concern about, oh, you figured this out. There's a pattern. Someone's going to get murdered. Even with, this guy, her supervisor, Blair Underwood's character, having a daughter that has a birthday coming up, and we know this is all the birthday murder, and they're all connected to birthdays, and he's connected to the case, and he finds out she's connected to the case, and he has like no concern for his own daughter's birthday. Very strange, right? Wouldn't you be like, I'm connected to this case, this guy knows who's investigating this, my daughter's got a birthday coming up, what are the chances we're going to get targeted? And he just doesn't have any caution there, lets her mother walk right into the house again with the possessed doll, welcomes her in, says, hey, this is great, how are you? Doesn't question anything even after he's already pulled up a possessed doll. Or, I mean, he doesn't know it's possessed, but he's pulled up this doll from like the barn and discovered this and noticed it's very satanic and strange, and he just welcomes her in and says, oh, this is great, and the doll's in the house, and then it's over. He's lost. Like, you'd be smarter than that if this is truly what was happening. So all of it just leads me to believe that, like, Lee Harker here is maybe caught up in some PTSD type situation where she has real memories of something traumatic that happened, but has now had these other memories planted in her by, who knows, by her mother. But I mean, I fully believe what happened in 1975. Longlegs comes to visit her, or whatever you want to, Nicolas Cage, and there's something traumatic that happens, some sort of abuse situation, most likely, potentially with the mother or without the mother knowing. Something happens. There's a police report, something happened, but her mother denies it all, and Lee has no knowledge of it into her 20s as she's becoming an FBI agent. So she's probably repressing that. And I believe that there's a weirdo in town who maybe goes by Longlegs, and he's strange with kids. And, even the girl in the store, the hobby store he stops into, says, hey, Dad, the creepy, weird guy from town is here again. And it's like, nobody's questioning, like, this guy, he's very obsessed with birthdays. All these murders are happening on birthdays. He's a creepy guy. He's very strange. He's acting odd. Hey, could it be him? They're just kind of like, oh, he's the creepy odd guy, which again makes me think maybe there aren't all these murders actually happening. Maybe this is imagination. Maybe this is role playing by Lee. But I imagine that they had this encounter. She had a horrible encounter with this strange man, and it created this panic in her own mind. And now, as she's joined the FBI and she's seen some horrible things, which I believe some of what she's seen is true, it's starting to trigger some sort of this response. She's in this world surrounded by people who are, panicking about satanic stuff. She starts to develop this story in her mind, and she starts to lose it. Because if you'll notice in the movie that there are 3 FBI agents who work with Lee. First guy, they're off on their first adventure, rookie cop, shot in the head. Who's the only witness? It's Lee. Okay, maybe she did, maybe she's the one. Second FBI agent dies. Who's the only witness? Well, that would be Lee and her mother. So again, is Lee involved here? FBI agents keep dying, but only when they're alone with Lee or her mother, which may not, again, could be a figment of some imagination. And then we get Blair Underwood and his character, who again dies only in the presence of wife, daughter, Lee, and her mother. Nobody else is there. He gets shot again. It's making me start to think, like, is she shooting people? Is she freaking out? Is she killing people because she thinks there's some larger conspiracy and that none of this is really happening? Like, is she believing something that's not real and these people are ending up dead around her and it's really her? Because even if you go back to like the scene in her cabin, she's in this isolated cabin in the middle of nowhere. She calls her weird mother, which is a very strange conversation. And then Longlegs shows up at her house and he's in the woods, but then he kind of like Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees like morphs into her house. Like somehow she misses him. She's an FBI agent. She scours the property and somehow then she turns around and he's in the house. Then she goes into the house and there's a letter there. And she's the only person in the movie that gets left a letter by Longlegs. And, he's never mailed a letter to the FBI or any of the agents following the case. So why does she get a letter? Why is it hand delivered to her house? I don't know. Is she creating the cipher in these letters by herself? Is she like creating this story in her head? This is where I start to go like, is what we're seeing what we should be believing? Because I just think there's a lot of themes here, and there's moments where she sees Longlegs and then he kind of fades out and disappears. And she also has the devil kind of focusing on her and following her around in different scenes. And you're seeing this. And of course, there's the straightforward explanation of, yeah, it's devil possession. But there's also like this in the back of my head. I'm like, is it real? Is it happening? She's imagining this. She's panicking the way that other people did. Other people thought in this time period that these things were real, that there were satanic cults running everywhere. And like, there are crazy satanic, there's stuff happening out there, but like in reality, everything that's happened in the Catholic Church is far, far worse than what's happened with anybody who's like doing satanic type stuff. I mean, the rampant abuse, go back to the Crusades, go back to colonialism. I mean, the things that they've done, and Oz Perkins says this, and he has this really cool theme that he's touching on with Christianity. He's like, it's kind of fitting that like they're using that as a cover to get into the houses. And there's this real like Christianity versus satanic and what's truly evil. And he mentioned, he's like, whenever the Crusades ran through and started wars for hundreds of years, they weren't saying Hail Satan. When people came in and conquered native populations and killed them all, they didn't say Hail Satan. They said praise Jesus. Like a lot of worse stuff has been done in the name of God and Jesus than has been done in the devil. And he has this whole commentary throughout, and that really plays into the satanic panic theme, which I think they never touch on but is underlying in all of this. And so it just had me thinking, because it's just very strange that FBI agents die when only she's there. She has a connection to Longlegs, but had no memory of this forever. Clearly repressed memory issue, clearly PTSD, clearly her mother is mentally ill and is a hoarder and has this strong belief in Christianity. She would be a perfect candidate to be a part of the mass hysteria of the satanic panic and be planting these ideas into her daughter's head. And then whether her daughter even, she goes to work for the FBI or not, whether any of that's real, like I just think there's some really interesting strings here that could lead to more. Because why are there no forensics? They say forensics went in, they found nothing. There's no fingerprints, there's no evidence anybody's been in the home, blah blah. We can't find any evidence. But then we know that her mother's been in the home. Like there would be fingerprints, they would have these dolls, there would be boxes, there would be, her fingerprints would be on the door or the doorbell, or knocking on the door when she enters the home, or her fingerprints would be somewhere in the house. They could make this connection. Okay, there is an unknown person in the home, but they say there's nothing. Forensics team went through, they found nothing, so there's never anybody in the home. Like she'd leave behind hair or something. I've watched enough forensic files. There's no way you're going into 11 different people's homes and watching them commit horrible bloody murders, getting back in your car and driving home and not leaving any sort of evidence behind. So did this happen or not? Because it just feels like a bit of role play at times by Lee, and involving her sick mother and making her mother, who she clearly has a strained, weird relationship with, kind of the villain, and bringing back this strange man who clearly is severely mentally ill and has issues and acts very childlike, and probably has the mentality of like an 8-year old or something. um is he a scapegoat? Are we just Is she just picking him out? And I believe that he did do something horrible to her at some point, and that's why she comes back to him. But the whole thing is just really odd. Like, does he look like a serial killer mastermind who can do all this stuff? He's childlike. He's mentally so immature and strange, and he's not somebody who could, in my eyes, do all of this. So that's my theory. That's my little fan theory, is that Lee Harker is in the FBI, has severe trauma, PTSD, gets roped up into some satanic panic type of situation, imagines a lot of this, loses her mind, possibly kills some of the FBI agents herself, um, and creates this story about the creepy guy in town and her mentally ill mother, that they're around killing families with possessed dolls. And you know, the, wouldn't that make as much sense as possessed dolls and actual supernatural activities? And like, that's where you can take this movie and go two ways. Take it at face value and say this is really neat supernatural detective horror, or you can take it and place it more in reality and in the context of the time period and what was happening in these organizations and in the country, and maybe extrapolate something else from that goes a bit deeper. And that's why I was telling people, like, I think this movie's a lot deeper. When people are saying, it was so surface level, the twists and the turns were so simple, they were so straightforward. Like, even my wife was like, I guess from the beginning, something with her mother was up. She knows this Longlegs guy, mother knows her. She was like, I caught all of this. And I'm like, okay, if it's that obvious, then maybe it's a movie. They're telling a story, so it shouldn't be too complicated so you can understand it, but also maybe there's more to it. And I know Oz Perkins will say there isn't, and he's said, like, a lot of people have asked, like, what's the theory behind the name and this or that, and he's been like, no, it's just a name. No, that has no symbolism. No, 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 no. But I think sometimes when you create a movie, that's part of the beauty of it, is people can see beyond. And also I think that maybe subconsciously sometimes filmmakers make things that have these themes, and maybe they don't even realize that maybe it's part of their own trauma. I mean, Oz Perkins has a ton of like trauma and had a very like strange childhood from what I understand. Like, first of all, his father is Tony Perkins, who played Norman Bates. So yeah, okay, his father was Norman Bates. That's weird. But his father also struggled with a lot of mental health stuff, his sexuality. Coming up in Hollywood, people were saying he was gay, and then he was saying he wasn't. And he went to conversion therapy, married Osgood's mother, had children, but died fairly young in 1992. People maintain to this day he was gay, but he was playing that he wasn't. I mean, he clearly a man who was going through some stuff. And then to add on top of that, here's some more trauma. Osgood's mother, who is an actress, dies in 9/11. She's on the first plane that hits the World Trade Center. She's on that plane, dies in 9/11. So, like, this guy did not have a super happy, fun time, and probably has some stuff that, messes with him. And I just wonder, like, maybe some of that's coming out, right, in his filmmaking. It's definitely always bleak and dark and disturbing. So maybe there's more to even than what he would admit on the surface level of what's going on in his films. And certainly, I'm gonna, if he says it is what it is, then fine, it is what it is. But that doesn't mean that we can't, as viewers, pull more out of it. And that's definitely what I think is going on here. I think there's deeper levels to this. Um, and there's other theories out there. Is Longlegs her father? Because we never get a father figure. It's never mentioned, just single mom. So is he her father? Was there some weird thing that happened with her father? Was her mother abusive? Did her mother participate in this? There's a lot of ways you could go. There's a lot of undertones to this, with really disturbing themes that people have taken online. But personally, just knowing what I know about the satanic panic and the way that law enforcement organizations were running in that time period, and the way that it really truly morphed people's beliefs and placed false memories into their heads, that makes a lot of sense to me when you think about what happened in the film. Because there's just no way that so many people are ending up dead, and there isn't this just massive, like like the National Guard would be pulled in or something. Like you've had 40 people get killed, families keep getting wiped out, and everyone's just kind of, well, put the rookie on it. That's strange. So like maybe she pulled herself into something that was not as deep as she thinks it is, and she got lost doing the Charlie Day and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia meme, right? She's on the wall and she's got all the strings connected and all the ciphers and all the symbols, and it's like maybe she's the one who's going down a rabbit hole that doesn't exist, and that's how you end up with all of this. And oh, but Longlegs confessed. I get that too. He turns himself in. Well, tell me that this crazy mentally ill childlike person wouldn't do that. Like if he thought that there were people targeting him, and he would just be like, well, I'll just turn myself in, I'll go to the police. And but also maybe that's all made up. Maybe she pulls him in. Maybe he's in the interrogation room and he's saying some wacky stuff, and it just confirms for her what she's trying to make up in her head. Like we don't get enough definitive answers to say that that couldn't be it, or any of these other theories I've seen couldn't be it. There's not even enough definitive answers to say, oh yeah, it's just straightforward supernatural. Because that, if you want to base this film in reality, then that doesn't make sense. If you want to base it in its own alternate universe where these things did happen and could happen, then it could make sense. But it really depends on how you approach this movie. Those were my thoughts, and I wanted to put them out there because I think that, like I said, this is Shrek. There's onion. This is an onion. There are layers to this, as Shrek would say. Very, very layered. I need to watch it again. I need to watch it a third time, a fourth time. I need to pay attention to the tiny little, the minor clues. Why is Lee always isolated? Why, when horrible things are happening, is she the only witness all the time? Like, just things that don't add up. And I need to look for those kind of tighter clues, closer clues, because I do think that there's something else happening. But I highly recommend it. If you guys have not seen Longlegs, go check it out in the theater. It did super, super well at the box office, which is amazing for an independent, smaller label horror film from Neon. Osgood Perkins has 2 more horror movies coming from Neon soon. So like, good run for him. He's got a good thing going. But I highly recommend seeing it with an audience. My audience was great. I've heard varying degrees of success with audiences. Some people have been saying that they've heard laughing at Nicolas Cage's, unhingedness in his performance, because he's become kind of a meme. But really, in this movie, I think if you're laughing at Nicolas Cage in this, it's a nervous laugh. Like I heard a lot of that. I heard a lot of laughs because honestly, it is funny on a surface level. What he's doing is funny in a crazy, unhinged way. You can't help but maybe laugh at him. But it's a nervous laugh because you truly don't know what he's going to do next. He's going to snap. He's going to do something insane. He's going to start screaming, and it's going to be like this little jump scare again. So go see it with an audience. Mine was like locked in. Everyone was super quiet. I heard some gasps, definitely some nervous laughs. People were locked in, which was awesome to watch with that group, and just see it in a dark theater and really lock in yourself and just, experience this the way it's definitely meant to be experienced. I highly, highly recommend you get out and see it. But that's this week's quick episode. Kept this one a little bit shorter because it's a new movie. I'll probably have more to say about it. I did post on Instagram my thoughts. If you want a more straightforward like movie review, I gave a little 90-second review on my Instagram page. But yeah, great movie, great direction, great cinematography, great dread, anxiety. Just, I think one of the quotes that's out there is like, it festers inside you for days, and it truly does, which is why I want to make this a couple days later. It's a very, very solid movie that'll leave you thinking, and those are the best kinds of movies. So go embrace it and support it and enjoy it. And I think even if you don't like it, you'll come out with something from it. Like, even the people who didn't like it, they had their reasons why they didn't like it, but they're still thinking about it days afterward. Even if you didn't like it, you're still gonna be thinking about it. It's gonna have an impact on you one way or another, which I find interesting because it's not just a throwaway movie that you're like, that sucked, and you never think about it again. You'll think about it. It's good. Even if you don't like it, it's good that it makes you think, and it drives conversation. And I love that about movies. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed so you get all the latest podcasts. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, make sure you follow along. If you're enjoying the episodes, leave a 5-star review, some comments. That always helps support the the podcast and our growth. Appreciate all the support so far. We're coming up on 1,000 followers on Spotify. We've had thousands of listeners across all the different platforms. The support's been great, so I appreciate you all very much. Also, make sure to follow me on social media. Those links will be in the audio and video descriptions. Instagram is probably my number one platform. If you want to follow me, you can hit me up over there, send some DMs, whatever you want to do. Great way to get in touch. But thank you for coming out for this episode. Thank you for your support. I hope you guys go check out Longlegs. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe, stay healthy out there, and I'll talk to you soon. Hey there, movie buff. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of House of 1,000 Movies. I hope you had as much fun listening as I did discussing some of my favorite films. Don't forget, if you're into video podcasts, you can head over to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. If you're already on YouTube, it's right there, so why not hit it? And for our audio listeners, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you've been enjoying the show, why not show me some love by leaving a 5-star review? It really helps me out and it lets me know that I'm hitting the mark. And hey, before you go, a quick shout out to our sponsors. By supporting them, you're not just supporting the show, but also the content you love. Thanks again for joining me in the House of 1,000 Movies. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and keep watching great movies. Take care, everyone.